Hey guys, it's MugenLord here, and I'm back again with another discussion video. And today I want to talk about Final Fantasy 15. Now, if you guys been following my channel, you notice that I haven't really been talking much about Final Fantasy 15 or the Final Fantasy franchise altogether. And I will start talking about more Final Fantasy. And Final Fantasy has been one of my favorite RPG franchises besides Chrono Trigger and Secret of Mana and the Tales series and everything. But Final Fantasy is very close and dear to my heart. Now, I've been super hyped for this for Final Fantasy 13 since the beginning of its announcement, and when Final Fantasy 13 Versus, which is now Final Fantasy 15, when it was all part of the Crystal Nostalis series or whatever like that. And ever since I saw this game, I was pretty interested in the game. I was like, I can't wait to see what they do with this game. And when I heard that it was from the same team that created Kingdom Hearts, I said, okay, this is different, this is unique. And they said the gameplay will be much different from Final Fantasy 13, the one of the main games in the series. So I was like, okay, I would love to see where they take this game. And then ever since they showed the first promo trailer to the game at E3 of 2005 or 2006, I believe, and that's when my freshman year of college too, and we have never heard anything about the game after that. News of the game has been very, very scarce. People have been looking up the game, and then the game has been going through trouble with development. And then once Final Fantasy 13 came out, I was pretty disappointed with the game. It wasn't what the game had lived up to be. I guess my expectation for a new Final Fantasy game was, I guess, set too high. But once I really got my hands on the game, it really wasn't what it cracked up to be, and I was really upset about the changes that they went with the game, and it didn't feel like a true Final Fantasy game. It was super linear. You was only able to control one character, and if that one character that you take control of dies, then it was the end. It was pretty much end of the game. And then after every battle, your character recover and stuff. It just felt less like a Final Fantasy game, and I was super upset with it. So I began to start losing a little bit of faith in Final Fantasy in the series altogether after Final Fantasy 13. And then after that, years went by, and then they finally rumors was coming out that Final Fantasy 13 Versus will become Final Fantasy 15, a mainline Final Fantasy series game. So when E3, when they announced that it changed to Final Fantasy 15, I was super excited with the game. I just couldn't wait to get my hands on the game. But one thing that really had me thinking was, like I said before, I grew up with the original Final Fantasies, and when the original Final Fantasy had its traditional active turn-based gameplay system, and I really enjoyed those games. And it seemed like a lot of role-playing games, JRPGs, are pretty much shifting away from turn-based. They more so go into action-oriented type of gameplay, more like those hack and slash and fast-paced action combat and stuff like that. And there's nothing wrong with that, because I do enjoy those type of RPGs. But when it comes to Final Fantasy, I love Final Fantasy because of its turn-based combat and everything. And it seemed like that Final Fantasy slowly started going that direction. And I remember back in the day when it came to JRPGs, when you did have those games that were pretty much action-based, like Secret of Mana, when those games were around, or like Star Ocean or the Tales series, those games really stood out from the rest of the role-playing games, because not many RPGs were doing those type of action type of combat scenarios and everything like that. So those games were really a treat once you got your hands on them. It made them stand out. Every time I saw Secret of Mana game, I said, yes, this is the game I wanted to play. And the first thing that comes to my mind is the combat system. Every time a new Star Ocean franchise would be announced, or they show a trailer, I recognized its gameplay. Its gameplay stood out. Now it seemed like with Final Fantasy, it seemed like Final Fantasy have gone that action route, which is nothing wrong. So once the game came out, I had reserved the collector's, got the collector's edition and everything. Like I said, I'm a big Final Fantasy fan. Now I went into the game not looking at any reviews or listening to anybody's opinions, because I really wanted to get my hands on it and get a grasp of it myself. And I noticed that this game felt, I wouldn't say rushed. It seemed the game felt it felt like something was missing from the game. Starting with the intro. Now, every Final Fantasy game always had an epic intro. You know what I'm saying? Like, especially with Final Fantasy 7. Final Fantasy 7 had the bombing mission. Final Fantasy 6, when Terra, at the beginning, we was on top of the snowy mountain, walking in the mechas and everything like that. Every Final Fantasy had like a touching intro, especially Final Fantasy X with the Blitz Ball, when Titus playing Blitz Ball, and when Sin showed up, and then Auron came in and gave Titus the sword, and they was fighting their way through Xanderkin and stuff like that. Those were hot openings, and it really immersed you into the world. It prepared you to. It made you understand what the world was going through, what the characters were going through, and everything. It sets you up for everything. So once the game started, you would dive right in. You got invested in the world. But it seemed like with Final Fantasy 15, soon the intro start. Soon the game starts. You start off in like a tutorial, and it seemed like in the tutorial is teaching you the controls and everything, and then the paintings that you go to pretty much gives you a backstory. You have to read the backstory of the world and how the world works and the governments and stuff like that. And I'm like, why are they feeding us some of these parts of the story through paintings and everything? Why can't the story itself explain those things? So once I finished the tutorial and everything, you dive right into, I guess you could say, the future of the game. And when the game starts, you take control of the character, and everything is on fire and stuff like that. And soon the game starts, you're in control, and then you run into Infrit, and then after you run into Infrit, the game goes back into a cinematic, and it goes right back into the past. And I was saying to myself, what was the point of giving me control of the character? And then just for a brief second, give me another cinematic, and then the game starts. You're on the road, and your car broke down. So to me, I think it was kind of a bummer how this Final Fantasy had started out or whatever. And then once I got into the game, I started, trying out, exploring the different areas and stuff like that. And don't get me wrong, the graphics is beautiful, the world is pretty big and everything, but to me, it felt like something was missing, and I couldn't drag myself through the game at all. I really couldn't push myself to continue to play the game, so I stopped for a little bit. But lately and recently, Square has been holding their promise, been keeping their promise, and releasing more DLC for the game. And it looked like the DLC looks really interesting. Like, each character have their own chapter. Ignis, Prompto, Gladius, they all have their individual DLC with their own stories and stuff like that. And it really looks interesting. And then as I started doing research and started reading farther on, players were saying that the chapter 13 was very linear, and it seemed like the game from that point on, the game had pretty much became linear, and it seemed like certain elements, certain characters, or backstories of certain characters felt missing. And then later on, I found out that it was certain things that they couldn't put into the game because I guess you could say time constraints. But they said through an update they was going to put characters back in, add more to the story and stuff like that. So I was saying to myself, hey, maybe this is the perfect time. I'm glad that I did pull away from the game a little bit and waited, and now that they pretty much, I guess you could say, added more to the game or fixed the game in a way. So I'm very tempted to go back and give it a try and see what my opinion so far of the game changes because I really like Final Fantasy 15. The DLC looks really interesting, and it's really pulling me in right now. And then the main DLC that I'm really waiting for is the multiplayer DLC. That was the main reason why I got the game, because I figured that if we were going to get a multiplayer, because the game, like, it was set up for it to be a multiplayer type of game. So I'm waiting for that DLC. I really want to try that because my brothers have Final Fantasy 15 as well. I would love to play the multiplayer DLC when that releases and play with my brother and maybe stream it and everything. But what do you guys think? I really need your opinion on it. What do you feel about Final Fantasy 15? Do you think it's one of the best in the series? Where do you rank Final Fantasy 15 compared to the other Final Fantasy games that you have played in the past? So make sure you leave your comments in the comment section below. Should I give the game a try and give it another go now that there's been some tweaks, added DLC and everything to the game? And if you like this video, make sure you hit that like and that subscribe button. This is MugenLord. I'm signing off.